grand final. Carl Jr., Mudda, Otak, and Mime. The last 4 survivors in this World Cup. TrackMania 2022. Who is going to be crowned the champion? 140 points. 5 tracks. And 4 players who are extremely hungry for victory. As we go into the live round. Ladies and gentlemen, we are starting it off with New School. We saw this map be played in the semi-final as well. We have Otak, Mudda, Carl Jr. and Mime. We have Mime with the very first mistake. Is already a second behind. Hopefully he can refocus for next round, but it is Carl Jr. who is leading the race right now. Mudda, we have seen with a different line, also crashing now in the wall, and this is an easy 10 points for Carl Jr. It is Otak in second place. He's going to be happy as well. Mime has moved up to third after that early mistake. So very good for Mime to get third place instead of last, but it's looking like Carl Jr. is going to take home the very first round here. On New School, only the ice is remaining. We have seen quite a few mistakes occur on this last ice part of the track, but Carl is looking like a machine. 105.53 for Carl Jr., getting the 10 points. We have Otak in second, Mime in third, and Mudda in last. Is this going to be the start of Carl Jr.'s domination in this round? Or will the other players have the ability to control him a little bit? Carl has won every single match in this tournament, winning every single round. But can he win it all in the grand final as well? Right now, it is Otak leading, Carl in second, Mudda in third, Mime now in the mix as well. Good turn by Mime, puts himself into second position, even moving up to first place. And this is exactly what Mime needs here after that very lackluster first round. Now looking to grab himself a 10-pointer. Still leading. Carl Jr. is in second position though. Mime has a nice, comfortable lead, but the ice can cause a lot of troubles as Carl Jr. goes for a much different approach here. Stays in second place. Mime with a very inside line. This is gonna end poorly for Mime. And as it is Carl Jr. who had the much better approach for the last turn. Snipes away the 10 points. And that is how quickly it can go. But Mime getting second place. Here we go, round number 3. Otak with a very fast start. Mime with a very slow start in comparison. Him and Mudda in the back of the pack, but it is Otak now making a blunder. It is Carl Jr. in the lead. Is he gonna go for another 10 points? Mudda with that much more outside line will take over second place, but Mime fights back very nicely. Carl Jr. knows that he is already 3/10 ahead, but he cannot afford to save too much because Mime is rapidly closing in on him. And we only have the end to go. But Carl has proven round in, round out that he is very, very good in this last ice slide. Mime with a nice approach here, goes for the attack on the inside line, but the setup is very tight. Can he remain in first place, or is it going to be Carl Jr. again sniping Mime's first place away? We're just in front of the finish line. And that is 3 wins for Carl Jr. Mime is trying his best to fight Carl Jr., but keeps on losing it just at the last ice slide. Final round now. Is it going to be a clean sweep by Carl Jr.? It is looking like it can be, but he is now fighting the young chap. 17 years old, Otak, for that first place. Mime losing out on a lot of momentum in this plastic section. Has to accept his fate and is now in 4th position. But Mada with a huge blunder. And it is Mime who can take advantage of that. Otak versus Carl Jr. Is Otak going to be the one who is denying Carl the clean sweep on this first map? Or will Carl Jr. fight strong in that end? He has shown that he is having very good lines and a very good setup. He gets again, stays in first place. It is Otak who makes the blunder, and that is going to be the clean sweep. Wrap it up. Carl with another win here. Mime getting second. That is very nice. But it is Carl Jr. doing Carl Jr. things. Going into the next track. Mime sitting in a comfortable 2nd position. 22 points. And we are now onto Bobzag. We did see hefty amount of mistakes in this identity part. A lot of overtakes happening there, because if your entry in that identity is just slightly off, it is not looking good for you. But we believe in Mime, as he is sitting in 2nd place, trying his best, but he slides out very much, goes even for a risky transition himself, puts himself in 4th position right now. So let's have a look if some of these other players are going to be making mistakes here. Carl Jr. in 1st place, Mada close by, Otak in last. It is Mime still in 4th place. He needs to hope that some of these other players are gonna stumble. It is not looking like Carl is going to stumble anytime soon here. Same with Mada and Otak. But the identity can be troubling as all the players are entering it. Looks like a good setup for Carl. Nice transition as well. And that is another 10 points for Carl. It is going to be Mada in 2nd, Otak in 3rd, Mime in last. And now there's going to be a much closer gap between the 3 remaining players behind Carl, but double the amount of points already for Carl Jr. Come on, Mime. Show them what you're capable of. Good start now. No blunders. Finds himself in 2nd place. Has to go for a mini adjustment there. Quick thinking. Puts himself not in the wall. Stays in 3rd place. But it is Carl Jr. and Otak who are just in front of him. Mime with a much more inside approach here. Goes for the attack. And he is not giving up. Nice low jump as well for Mime. Challenging Carl for that 10-pointer. Is Mime going to be able to do so? But gets a unfortunate transition up the jump here. Very inside line. Keeps a lot of momentum going into the bobsleigh identity with 4 people. It is Carl Jr. leading the way. It is Mime moving up to 2nd position. Can he get a good transition? It is looking like he can. He is actually getting closer to Carl Jr. Is it going to be decided in the finish? Oh, man. Carl, another 10 points. Mime with all of his effort trying to get close, but manages to get 2nd place here. Here we go then. 3rd round. Mime's car is broken. And it is looking like Carl Jr. versus Otak is the battle that is happening right now. Mudda has also made a slight blunder. It is going to be the Canadian versus Otak. But it is not looking like Otak can battle this giant. Carl Jr. Otak goes for a much more inside line, but his exit speed is lacking. And Carl Jr. with a beautiful bobsleigh entry. It is Otak with more speed, but Otak has a sloppy transition here. It's a little bit bumpy. It is Carl Jr. who is actually making a 360 no-scope. And it is going to be Mudda who is getting first place. Otak in second, Mime in third, and the Giant has been defeated. Carl is now getting last place, but dear God, is he still far ahead? Going into the last round of Bobzag. Mime in the mix for third position now. If Mime could just get a 10-pointer here, that would be very lovely. He is setting himself up for that first place here. But the player that he's battling is Carl Jr. The other two quite far behind. It's looking like a beautiful round for Mime. Carl has made a blunder. Otak has made a mistake as well. It is all looking to be a 10-pointer for Mime. But of course, the identity can cause havoc, as we have seen before, time and time again. It is Mime going with the entry. Gets it very smooth. Oh my... Oh. He makes it. 10 points for Mime. Barely avoiding the pillar. 101.13. That is very much needed. We have a new DNF community member, and his name is Otak. 69 points for Carl Jr. Very nice. As we go into the next map here. We are going for Quicksand. Short warm-up. And we are going live. Map number 3. Carl with 69, Mime with 45, Mudda 38, and in last it is Otak with 29. Great start by 3 players here. Carl Jr. hits the wall. It is also Mudda hitting the wall, and it is all looking good for Mime all of a sudden with a 0.2 of an advantage. Could get himself a nice 10-pointer here. He does not want Otak to have this 10. That is for sure. Extending his advantage, actually, going into the ice wall. 3 tenths ahead of Otak. We just have the identity coming up. That was a sloppy turn here. Manages to save it, but it is Otak who is charging now for first place. Mime needs to step it up here with a very tight approach. Can Otak fight back here? It's gonna be decided right in front of the finish line. And Mime gets it. Mime with the 10 points. Otak 6. Carl getting last again. And Mime now actually creating a gap towards that third place himself. He is still quite far away from Carl Jr., who had a magnificent start to this grand final. But Mime is giving it his all right now, as Carl has made another blunder. And he finds himself in last place, 2 tenths behind. Mime, on the other hand, finds himself once again in that hot spot, first place. Everyone is trying to beat Mime right now. Otak, Mada, and Carl Jr. all trying their best to catch up. But Mime is holding it down in first place. Onto the ice he goes. How much exit speed does he get? Mada is actually catching up quite fast here. Sets up for a bit of a better exit here. But Mada is unable to do so. It is Carl Jr. who is fighting strongly. The ending is going to decide a whole lot here. We saw a great one by Mime last round. And he is once again going to complete in first place. There you have 108.11 for Mime. And it is now a story of Mime. Carl Jr. who? Mime setting himself up for a clean sweep on Quicksand. Two wins in a row. Can he make it a third and fourth one? As he nails the start once again. Beautiful line there. Carl Jr. is struggling in the start quite heavily together with Otak. It is only Mada who is able to challenge Mime, but after doing that, finds himself clipping the wheels in the transition, and Mime is creating another 10-pointer here. He is cooking it up. 1/10 of an advantage. Carl trying to catch up, goes a little bit higher on the ice slide. Getting more exit speed, but it is not paying off. And the gap is actually only growing. Nice ramp cut by Carl Jr. will mean that he probably secures second place, but takes a lot of sand here. Same with Otak with that wide setup. It is looking like Mime is going for it again. And there you have it. The Polish Bull is once again in first place with another 108.16. That is 3 out of 3 wins. And the gap towards Carl Jr. has now shrunken down to only 7 points. Can he make it a fourth? We have a huge blunder by Mada. Completely misjudging the start. It is Carl Jr. who is so far ahead. Already 1796 is a great checkpoint. Mime and Otak are not giving up here, as Carl Jr. seemingly loses quite a little bit of speed here going into the bobsleigh. It is Mime going into first. Can he avoid hitting the checkpoint? Yes, he can. It is a 1v1 battle right now between Carl Jr. and Mime. We do know that they have different lines in the ice slide here, with Carl going a little bit higher, Mime with much better exit, but it is looking like Carl Jr. will stay in first place. He is also opting for that ramp cut, but it's also Mime going for the ramp cut. They are just risking it for the biscuit. They do not want to give each other the 10 points by the looks of it, as we have Mime with a very aggressive turn on the booster. It is Carl who goes a little bit wider with the speed slide, and finally Mime is able to get the defeat right in front of the finish line. But what a race here between these two guys. They are not giving each other any room. And we have another community member joining the DNF community, Mada here. But what a race. Carl versus Mime looks to be the battle for this World Cup. $92 points for Carl. Mime with 81. Mada 51 and Otak 46. Carl and Mime really taking all the 10 pointers and 6 pointers away from Mada and Otak. And if you are only getting bottom places, it's so hard to get in the groove of things. Here we go. Rad Landing. This was the map that put Mime into this grand final. Let's see if it is gonna be in his favor once again. Great start here for Mime in the first round. We do have a slightly disadvantage for Carl, 2/10 behind. Mime going for a wide slide. Gives the opportunity for the other players to catch up. As we can see here, Otak is closing in. Going into the double bobsleigh. We have seen massive mistakes occurring in this identity section. So let's have a go with Carl Jr.'s POV, as we will see all the landings happen right in front of him. Different setups. We have everyone actually making it. It is a sight to behold. Mime also getting a lot more booster, and it's looking like Mime will win here. Ladies and gentlemen, another 10 points for Mime. 108.96 is a beautiful time here by Mime. Carl Jr. getting last. But what a great race that was. It is only 4 points of a difference between Carl and Mime, which once was 25 points, is now only 4 points. No mistakes so far. We have an early release by Carl Jr. Is not feeling great on this map by the looks of it. Once again, 2/10 behind. And he has a uphill battle. It is Mime who actually makes the mistake now. Has to... gets the slow motion block as well. He is gonna get last position here. This Mada leading. And this is gonna put a dent in that nice comeback that Mime was doing. Unless Carl Jr. is not getting first, then it doesn't really matter at all. It is looking like Mada has the best setup. It is actually Otak struggling a little bit as well. Getting challenged by Carl. Mada is able to stay in first place. Carl Jr. gets second. But is Mime able to finish here? No. He has upgraded his novice status to now a VIP member of the DNF community. That is quite unfortunate for Mime here. But we have Carl Jr. crossing the triple digits. 101 points. Great start by all 4 drivers. We once again see one player a little bit further behind. In this case, it will be Mada. Mime challenging the 10-pointers with Otak. Otak is opting for this no slide line, which is not really faster at all if we just compared it with the Mime line. Carl Jr. joining the battle as well. Quite often see them touch the water just a little bit to get a nosedive here. Going into the bobsleigh afterwards, it is Mime, Otak, and Carl all within a 1/10 of one another. Is Mime able to hold strong in this identity? Looks like a better setup for Carl Jr. as he is challenging Mime right now. But what a jump by Mime! Is he able to keep it together? It is looking like Carl has a little bit more speed, but no, he stays in front of Carl Jr. 200ths of a second is the gap between Mime and Carl, right in front of the finish line. And we have a new member, VIP status for Mada as well in the DNF community. Otak now 58 points, Mada 67. It is not looking good for these players here, as they are 40 points behind the lead. It is Mime also with triple digits. The only player to challenge Carl Jr. in this final so far. It is, however, Otak with a massive mistake now. 9/10 behind. It is a 3-way battle between Mada, Carl, and Mime. Going around the pool, you can see Mime once again going in the water just a little bit. Carl stays in first place, but Mime is really close. He is actually overtaking Carl for that first position. And now we are going into the identity. These two players are just challenging each other. Round in, round out. And it is going to be Mime with a beautiful line. And Carl Jr. flies out. And that is a 10-pointer for Mime. And he will be much closer now to Carl Jr. He is actually taking the lead in this World Cup Grand Final, ladies and gentlemen. We have a new leader right here. Mime, 111. Carl, 110. Mudda, 73. And Otak, 62. There we go. Short warm-up before we go in for the next one. We did see the performance from Carl and Mudda on hard already. And we could crown the world champion on this map. It could either be Carl or Mime if they clean sweep it. We're now in the first round. We have the first player making a mistake, and that is going to be Mudda. Dropping far behind, colliding with the wall in the dirt turn. It is now a three-way battle. Carl Jr., Mime, and Otak. Carl still in the lead. Mime is the only person who is able to challenge. Look at this downhill section. He is giving it him all. Carl is also not giving up. Otak slightly behind. Otak has actually made a massive mistake. We are going into the identity. It is all or nothing here. Mime versus Carl Jr. Carl Jr. with more speed, but who gets the smoother landing? It is going to be the Canadian who lands on top here. And that is a 10-pointer for Carl Jr. But what a battle between Mime and Carl all the way to the end. That is the first victory for Carl. He needs 2 more to get some finalists. And then there's 1 round remaining on hard here, so he could close it out completely. Mime is trying his best to keep him at bay, but he's not getting much help from Otak and Mudda. As we are in the second round. Mime finds himself in 3rd place after Otak has made a mistake. It is once again Carl Jr. in first. Look at his smile in the corner. Giga chatting it up. Is he gonna get another World Cup? It is Mime with a beautiful water section. He is risking it for the biscuits. And he is moving himself up to first place. Can he keep it together now in the identity? Carl Jr. is close by. It is also Mudda with a good ending. Could even challenge for 2nd place, but there you have it. Mime getting 10 points here. 127 for Mime. Once again, they are doing a rodeo for first place here. They are just juggling 1st and 2nd every single round. Round number 3. We do have every single player now making it. What about the dirt turn? It is looking good for every single one. But it is Carl and Mime once again in 1st and 2nd. Mudda and Otak are trying their best to catch up, but what a round from Carl Jr. Look at the gap that he has managed to build up throughout the 1st and 2nd sector of this track. But we do know that Mime's water turn here is extremely risky, extremely precise. Can he nail it again? Yes, he does. And he is going for a much more inside line on the dirt. challenges for first place, goes for a low jump as well. It is going to be Mime, Carl, and Mutta going for the ending here. Carl Jr. stays in first place, but the transitions, oh my god. What a round. Once again, 0.03 of a second. And we are setting ourselves up for a double finalist situation here. Ladies and gentlemen, if Mime gets first, Carl Jr. Carl Jr. is able to get finalist here. I will be inviting Mime more often to the Super Royale to figure out how to drive on pipes. This is beautiful scenario for Carl Jr., who is now a free bird getting finalist mode here. All he needs to do is get to the finish line. And he is not just getting to the finish line, he is actually going to deny a lot of precious points by the looks of it. Mutta, the only player who is close by, as we have Otak with 0.3 of a disadvantage. Mutta with a good first entrance here. Might be able to get the 10 points as he gets way better transitions. What an identity by Mutta. And there you go. Mutta actually getting 10 points. Mime needs to finish here. Good job for Mime. But ladies and gentlemen, Carl Jr. is now finalist. Is he gonna close it out? Right here, right now. He did the clean sweep. 40 points on New School. Short warm-up. Mime is able to get to finalist mode himself in this next one. But he has to stay in front of Carl Jr. Here we go. Carl Jr. won every single match in the group stage. Winning the semi-final. Is he gonna do it again here? Mime has been the only player to have a say in this, and Carl Jr. has made a mistake. Carl Jr. 1.5 seconds behind, and that means that we will have a double finalist situation coming up. Mime just needs to cross the finish line in order to get finalist. We still have the ending of the map to go. But Mime has a great pace right now in this round. Just needs to get to the end. But he also wants to deny points here. Beautiful setup. He just needs to replicate this next round. And I'm sure he can close out the match here. It is all or nothing. Double finalist situation. Will we see Carl Jr. close it out, or is it gonna be Mime, the Polish Giga Chad, XDD Amogus from Into the Breach, taking home victory here? Not the best start. It is Otak who has a beautiful one together with Carl Jr. This is not what you want to see. But Mime is not giving up yet. He finds himself in last place right now. Needs a miracle here. Otak not with a good plastic turn either. It is Mutta who comes back from 4th place. It is Carl Jr. looking very strong in first. It is Mutta colliding with the wall. And it is Carl Jr. making the mistake. Carl Jr. makes a mistake. Otak is right in front of Mime. We could crown a new world champion in the name of Mime. Carl is trying his best. It is going to be Otak denying victory here for Mime. It is all or nothing. The ice slide. No! What is happening up front? It is going to be Otak getting 10 points. But Mime sliding out. And Carl Jr. will say thank you very much. Oh my god. I'm gonna faint. Mime versus Carl Jr. Still double finalist. Oh, not a great start here for Mime. Puts himself in a huge disadvantage with a couple of poor drifts. Also not getting good dirt entries here. It is going to be an uphill battle right now for Mime. And he needs to hope that Otak or Mada is capable of denying Carl Jr. the victory once again. We have seen Carl Jr. make mistakes and he does it again. He is not feeling comfortable right now. Something is wrong with Carl Jr. as it is Mime also catching up all the way to the tippy top. And we have a four-way battle coming up in this ending. If Otak slides out, it is going to be a coin toss, but it is Mime who hits the pillar. It is Mime who hits the pillar. It is Carl going for his incredibly tight setup. If Otak slides out here, it's all over. But oh my god! And he slides out. And Carl Jr. is the world champion of 2022 once again. Carl Jr. takes the win. Who can stop this man? It was looking very good for Mime, but in the end it is going to be Carl Jr. winning here. Let's have a look at his reaction. There you go, standing up. He is very happy with the win, and we still have second place to be played. Carl, incredible performance though. We cannot deny that. But we still are playing for second place. And that second place could be Mime. He is having a lot of struggles again in this finalist attempt. Otak and Mada right in front of him. Come on, Mime. Pull it together. We did see the mistakes happen by Otak in last round. Mime just has to give it him all. Go for the full risking. It is, oh, a little bit too much risking. And it is Mada now moving up to first place here. Otak making a mistake as well. And there you have it. Mime still unable to close out his match. Going on to the next track. We have Bobzag. Mime in finalist. Mada 119. Otak 103. Mime was so close to becoming the first Polish world champion ever in TrackMania. But perhaps he has to delay it by one extra year. Carl Jr. again showing that he is the greatest of all time. Mime now in his fourth finalist attempt. Great start by Mime here. Is this gonna be the round? Carl Jr. is not in the mix anymore, so it's kind of a battle to himself. Mime 1/10 ahead. It is Otak trying his best to catch up, but it is not looking like he is capable of doing so. We still have Mime with a very smooth landing as well. It is going to be Mime entering the last Bobzag in first place, but can his entry be good? That is looking nice. The transition is going to decide a lot here. Gets it nice and smooth. What is happening behind? It is Mada trying his best. But there you have it. Mime, second place in the World Cup. Ladies and gentlemen, it could have turned into a first place, but it is a second position after all. Let's have a look at Mime's reaction to getting second here. Boom. That is nice. Mada wants a fist bump. He finally gets it as well. Didn't leave him hanging. Does some clapping, but there you have it. Mime is your silver medalist. He is feeling incredible. What a performance. What a performance by Mime as well. He went head to head with the greatest of all time and almost manages to beat him as well. He can be very proud of his performance. Otak and Mada will be battling it out right now for that third position. Mada is looking to be in a great position to get third, as he is able to get 10 points here as well after a mistake by Otak. And that puts Mada at 135 points. Just needs to finish, and then he has a couple free finalist attempts as well. Here we go. Otak trying his best to grab 10 points himself. And he is looking to do so. I have a feeling that Mada is taking a very safe approach and does not want to upgrade his VIP membership from the DNF community to a Diamond Opal membership. So he is taking it extra safe and steady right now. As you can see. We have, however, seen someone save extremely hard and then almost joining the DNF community. But it's looking like Mada knows exactly what he is doing. And there you have it. Mada setting himself up for a third place in the World Cup of 2022. He can also be very, very happy and proud of his performance here. Finalist mode for Mada. Otak has a massive, mammoth task up ahead. The young player, first time reaching the grand final. Now in a position where he needs to deny Mada the closing of this match. And we have ourselves a very nice battle. 500s between these players. Avoiding the water. Wow, I thought Otak actually clipped the water there. Has a pretty bad setup for the transition here, but actually gets it very nice. Mada setting up for the ice slide. Here goes the Ice King himself. Moving up to first place. Otak with little to no speed. Going into the identity for one more time. It is Otak actually having more speed. It is going to be the transition that's going to decide a lot. It is Otak clipping. And there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. The man from down under. The myth from Gotham. The Batman himself. It is Mada closing out the grand finals in third place. Otak getting last. Let's have a look at the happiness from Mada when he crosses the finish line here. He is not too happy. He is satisfied, but you can see that he is not happy with how he played overall in this grand final, ladies and gentlemen. And that is going to conclude this grand final. Carl Jr. once again winning it. He did the 100% win rate and very much deserved. We have Mime in second place, Mada in third, and Otak in last.